I've been told more than enough times from small business owners, I don't want the landlord to know how much money I have and how much money I make, because then they're going to charge me more in rent. And I say, no, that's not how this works. That's not how this works at all.
Sure.
Think about it from the perspective of if you were to get a loan from a bank, you would want the bank to think that you're low risk, high credit, and you don't need the loan.
Sure.
Right? That's what you want the bank to think. A landlord's no different. Now, theoretically, they're not giving you a loan, but they are taking a risk, and a long-term risk. They're not selling you something. They're leasing something to you. So you need to show them very good credit, and you need to show them that you have a great business and you make lots and lots and lots of money, right? That will help you get a better deal.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Coffee Break Podcast, where our mission is to share business ideas, practices, and strategies while we enjoy our cup of coffee. Today's guest is Darrell Palasciano, and he's a ball of energy. We're going to be talking about retail real estate, how you go about finding space, why it's relevant, how the whole process kind of works, and what does the future of retail look like? It's all the topics we're going to be discussing today. But before we get into that, I do want to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already. This is a absolute free podcast that you can download and share with others. If this is a topic that may be of interest to other people that you know, make sure you share it with them. But subscribe, because we do have a brand new episode that comes out every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., and we want you to be a part of it. So make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on right now, or you can see the video version on YouTube and Facebook by simply searching for Loc-Doc Security and clicking the subscribe or follow button. You can do that there, or you can find out all the information you want to know, as well as more information about the guest on our website, locdoc.net/podcast. Thanks for joining us today. Grab a cup of coffee and get ready for this conversation.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break. Oh, yeah.
Darrell, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hopefully your coffee is okay.
Spectacular.
Yeah, we just roasted it a few minutes ago.
Well, I saw you grind it and make it. I was impressed.
It's fresh. So thanks for being here today. We're going to be talking a little bit about real estate as it pertains to retail and maybe whatever other information that we can pine out of you. But before we get into that, it is imperative that we handle rapid fire, 5 randomly selected questions just to get under your skin with unknown point values. And we'll give you a score at the end. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Question number 1. What is something that will instantly annoy you?
Clutter. And when I walk into a room and there's a mess, it gets me pretty charged up.
Really?
And that's changed over time, because when I was in college, I lived in absolute filth like most of us. But now I'm getting a little old, and falling behind the kids and the family and cleaning up just drives me nuts.
Just drives you nuts.
It's a problem.
We can have a therapy session after.
Yeah, we can. Is that not what this is? I thought this was therapy.
Exactly.
Darn.
Question number 2. If you had an extra hour in your day that would be allocated to one specific purpose, how would you use it?
Oh, man. There's so many options. An hour each day.
And you had to predetermine what it's going to be used for.
It's funny you say that, because my business partner says I need a hobby. So I think, and I haven't answered that question yet. I'm like a yard work guy and project guy. So I probably would take up a new project, get started, spend an hour a day for a week, and then never finish it and move on to the next one.
There you go.
Is that about right?
I like this guy. I had a conversation with somebody near the end of last year, and they said, "Chad, what hobbies do you have?" And I was like, I kind of took a little offense to it. I was like, I don't think I have one. This is bad.
Well, unless you're getting paid a lot for this, I assume this is probably a pretty good hobby.
I guess I could.
You
be
call it what you want,
as a
but.
All right, question number 3. What is something that really happened to you, but nobody would believe it unless they were there?
I tell this story, nobody believes it, so I'll tell it now to you and your audience. When I was a kid, my aunt and uncle's friend lived in a small house in the woods, and they fed the bears. And when I was 8 years old, we'd go to her house, and there'd be 10, 15 bear in her backyard, and we'd be throwing peanut butter and jelly sandwiches at them. out of the back window. And it was hard to believe even now. I lived it, and it's pretty wild. It was a lot of fun.
Just feed the bears.
She literally fed the bear. And the reason we knew about it was because there was a mutual friend who was a park ranger, and they knew about her. And they loved her because they could tag all the bear and study all the bear from her backyard. And I don't think it ever told anybody they were cheating. But that was 30, 40 years ago. So maybe maybe no one will get in trouble for that now. But yeah, it was cool, man. Just sat in a lady's kitchen and fed the bear.
It seems like it has potential dangerous outcome.
We pulled up, and again, I'm 8 years old, so I'm afraid of nothing. My parents were a little more level-headed. I'll never forget, we pulled up, and there was a bear in the driveway, and this old lady, probably 70 years old, comes out with a broom and starts yelling and screaming and banging on the pavement. Go away, go away! And the bear scurried off into the yard and into the woods, and we pulled up and ran into her house and closed the door behind us.
Give you a little path to get in.
She just gave us a little path to get in.
Wow.
Yeah.
Question number 4. What's your story about breaking the law?
Breaking the law, man. So I had a girlfriend in middle school, and she was a little wild child. She's still a Facebook friend of mine, and she's not wild anymore. But we went to the grocery store, and she stole some cookie dough.
Oh,
and it was like 6th grade, right? And I thought I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
She comes out, she's like, "Look what I stole," and I was like, "What the? You stole cookie dough?" It was good. It was good cookie dough.
it's the best cookie dough I ever had.
Kind of a dumb law breaking. That's the innocent one I can say, admittedly. I'm not gonna tell you the bad ones.
We'll keep it at that. Question number 5, last question. If each person had a warning label, what would your warning label say?
Oh man, what would my warning label say? Seems to me, I can have a short temper. Nah, that's not the way to say it. I can. I'm a generally small guy in stature, but I have a big mouth and I'm quite loud. And my kids will tell you that sometimes my language is colorful. So the warning label is, R-rated, for language. But other than that, I'm a pretty safe guy. I'm not going to hurt you.
All right. Well, we like it. Well, that was an entertaining rapid fire. We'll give you a score of 892.
892. That's a good number.
Yeah, we like it. Darrell, you are a real estate broker specializing in retail.
That's right.
Okay. For anybody that's listening to this or watching this that goes, what exactly does that mean? So I love this part of conversation with people because I sit down with people a lot and they have these really long, complicated titles. And then I ask, well, so what is it that you do? So what do you do on a daily basis?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. First of all, I do commercial real estate exclusively. I don't do any residential. Matter of fact, I hire brokers to buy or sell houses. So it's only commercial. And in our world, many of us, especially in larger cities like Charlotte, typically specialize in one product type or the other. So I specialize in retail real estate. I've been doing it almost 20 years. Next year will be my 20th year. And primarily folks who own real estate or intend to buy real estate or want to develop real estate with a retail component or an entertainment component or a restaurant component, any component that has a public interaction. They come to me and say, "Hey, what do you think about this property? Can you help me find retailers, restaurants, entertainment users to lease space from us or buy land from us and build?" So that, in a nutshell, is what I do. So I'm connecting the real estate and I'm working for those owners, for those property owners, and I'm calling on folks like Chipotle and Starbucks,
Gotcha.
The breweries, Costco and Publix and, everybody in between and saying, "Hey, you want to open a new store in Charlotte or in Charleston or in Raleigh or what have you."
Gotcha. So you're bringing the tenants into the properties and trying to make sure that this is a good environment. So I've always found that part of it kind of interesting because at a point you're almost like a matchmaker and also kind of helping to curate a vibe for a particular shopping center.
Yeah, listen, the vibe is super important. We call it a merchandising mix, is a pretty common term in the retail world, and it's oftentimes we'll get calls from business owners that want to join a shopping center and think it's only, well, what's the price? Mm-hmm. And what are the terms? And that's not usually the first conversation we have.
Sure.
The first conversation we have is, well, what sort of business are you looking to open? Mm-hmm. Well, why do you care? Well, because we're trying to create a vibe. So the merchandising mix is super important. And take it a step back. If I'm speaking to an owner who owns a shopping center and maybe it needs a facelift and mm-hmm. some of the tenants aren't doing great and they're just trying to reposition this property. The most important thing and one of the most complicated and frankly the funnest part of that is creating that merchandising mix. What does this property want to be?
Sure.
Hey, Mr. Landlord. Hey, Mr. Owner. What are your visions? Here's my visions. Let's come up with a mix, a merchandising mix, and let's focus on the users and the different types of businesses before we start focusing on the economics of the thing.
Well, to me, and maybe this is just a really broad comparison, but a lot of times we talk in organizations about the culture of an organization, and so you tend to attract a certain type of employee and attract a certain type of customer base. And it seems that what I hear you say in that market mix or that vibe is effectively, hey, so if we have this property and we want to bring tenants in, we also can curate kind of an ideal customer or ideal demographic that's going to be supporting this. So in that case, we want to keep those things consistent. And I'm trying to think of a bad mix, and nothing comes to my head right now, but I'm sure that there are those out there where you go, this is weird. There's a Chipotle, because you mentioned that, and also some other random store that just like the same person isn't going to go to both of those.
That's right.
So I'm guessing that's kind of what you're trying to do is get people to that shopping center and keep them there based off of the variety.
That's 100% right. That's 100% right. And if you jumping off points from there is, sometimes, especially in a redevelopment or a repositioning or a ground up new construction, sometimes who your key who the key customers that you want, and there's a one really cool concept that you need to attract to your project in order to get that customer. So in other words, you've got you've got a center that's a little bit dusty and has had a weird sort of lineup of tenants, and it just doesn't make any sense. You're like, but I want a younger group, a hipper group, somebody in their 30s with a little extra money. What's the first thing we need to do? Well, let's go get a brewery, right?
Nope.
And I'm picking an easy one,
sure,
right?
Yeah.
Because so now I'm going to go out and get a brewery. Well, the brewery says, well, I'm not going in that old shopping center that used to have it's got a vape shop and one of those gambling places and you make it up, right?
Sure.
Well, the dirty little secret in our business is, hey, Mr. Brewery, we'll make it worth your while, and so the hard part of it is, that to get that first, what we would call maybe an anchor tenant or a key tenant.
Yeah.
So maybe we need to give away the farm. Let's get the brewery in there. Let's pay him to come. Let's build him out. Let's give him free rent. Let's do whatever we need to do. And that creates the vibe.
Because that's going to bring the clients there, and then you can build your
then I
tenants.
lease around them. Yeah. And that's what I say to clients often is, hey, Darrell, what do you think about this particular tenant? They're going to pay me a lot of rent. Well, that's great. They're going to pay a lot of rent. However, I can't lease off of them. I can't lease around them. So as a standalone, sure, it's great to plug in that widget retailer because they're going to pay you a good rent, but they're not going to attract anybody else.
Sure.
And maybe that's okay.
Yep.
But if you're really trying to create a vibe, which is a big part of our business, is creating a vibe.
So you mentioned this before we started recording, but the easiest way, and this is very localized. We have folks that listen from across the country. So, but for the Charlotte area, there's a particular shopping area. Then there's a mall located there, South Park Mall, and I've always found it very interesting how they have curated their vibe and have maintained it for so long. So it's high-end retail. They've got the Nordstroms there. They've got their Louis Vuittons. All of the high-end retail that's around that, and it's a nice environment. But there's also other shops that have populated around
Sure.
it. So it's not just the draw of that mall, but also the surrounding areas. And then you can get in your car and drive 15, 20 minutes away, and it's completely different set of stores. Right. How does one, once you create that type of environment, maintain it?
Yeah, maintenance is difficult. And I think, first of all, is just a quick note on specifically South Park. It's a great example, right? Because Simon Properties that owns it is the largest mall owner in the world, and they might be the largest retail owner in the world. I haven't checked the stats recently, but more than likely. Anyway, and they're very, very good at doing that. Mm-hmm. Very, very good at doing that. The folks who do the leasing in that mall, whom I know pretty well, that's a big part of their business. And again, more so than even I'm used to, they're doing, really creative deals to attract the big guys, and making, and making decisions constantly and moving folks around. And you'd be amazed at the difference between what someone might be paying in rent to be right, by the food court, for instance, versus, over maybe on the I think it's the Dillard side over in Arizona, maybe it's the Macy's side. Anyway, huge difference, so that merchandising mix is super important. And I would never claim to, know half of what the Simon folks know, because they're as good as it gets. They're the best in the biz. But the maintenance of it is very challenging. I mean, you struggle with maintaining your existing tenants who have been loyal with you for a long time.
Yeah.
But you also know that the reality of a market, Charlotte's a growing, changing market. And to remain competitive, you need to stay cutting edge, right?
Sure.
And breweries are hot right now, and they've been for a while. But 20 years ago, we didn't have any breweries because they were illegal. So it's evolved, and the shopping center, the property has to continue to evolve. So how do you manage? How do you balance the brand new, cool concept? God forbid you bring in some big corporate guy into a neighborhood, but you also need somebody that you can rely on to pay you the rent every month for when the local guy's kind of having a bad month. And then how do you keep the tenants who've been loyal to you for a long time that are starting to get a little bit dusty, a little bit stodgy? How do you say, hey, can't wait to renew your lease? And I know a lot of the property managers and your asset managers that watch, we deal with this all the time, right? It's not always just about the rent to renew your lease. Hey, man, I really need you to, maybe it's time for a renovation.
Yeah.
Restaurant's great, but, I'm not so sure the fried chicken's working as much as maybe you need to, add something healthier things on the menu. And how do you have that conversation without completely offending a tenant who's been there for 15 or 20 years?
Yeah.
So it's tricky. And I would point to like a Park Road shopping center. You've got a lot of people who are super stoked about what Edens did, and I really commend them. I can only imagine the challenges that they had trying to maintain some of the longtime tenants who have been there for generations, while at the same time lifting the rest of the property and the rest of the tenancy up to the level of where it needed to be. I think the proof's in the pudding. If you go there and shop there right now, they did a heck of a job.
Yeah.
But it wasn't easy, and I'm very confident there are people who are not super happy about it, and it's a tough balance.
Well, I would imagine, and just for reference for what you're talking about, Park Road Shopping Center, and I feel like we've mentioned it on this podcast before in a similar context. It was kind of the shopping center, and again, this one. It's not very far from South Park, as the crow flies, so to speak. It's right around the corner, but it had become kind of like the dying shopping center. Just within the last 6 or 7 years, it was really just kind of dead and deserted. And now you go over there, and because Edens came in there and they basically did a facelift on the place, you've got J. Crew in there, you've got Burton's, you've got Jenny's Ice Cream, all of these Amelie's. You've got all of these other restaurants, these other tenants. They've really revitalized it. But in the same sense, you have some of your anchor in there, like Harris Teeter, that did a renovation. A lot of those stores that really just had to bring that level up as well. So that's an interesting concept that you interject in there is how do you bring the level up, not just run those old tenants off that have been there for a while, but bring them up to scale as well while keeping that vibe where you're wanting to bring it. Because it's a totally different place than it was before.
It is a totally different place, and I have to I have to again commend Edens for exercising restraint. I mean, they were very creative, but they maintained the building. And one of the challenges, being a Charlottean, is we love tearing things down. We love tearing things down.
Sure.
And there's no question in anyone's mind that the highest and best use of that property is not a community shopping center.
Yeah.
I mean, it should be vertical. It should be mixed use, all those good things. It's one heck of a location.
Oh, yeah.
Edens came in with a plan and with a desire to maintain it as the neighborhood center, and so they had a restraint. I mean, they kept as many local tenants as they could. They didn't tear anything down. I can't think they tore anything down. They activated some of those kind of small buildings that used to be the 1 hour photo booth out in the parking lot and turned it into Jenny's Ice Cream, right? Yep. And then the donut place. So that's, I mean, it's a case study, and I'm passionate about what I do. I'm passionate about the retail component of it, and it pains me to watch things get torn down. I do love new construction as well, but I also hate to see things go. So that's they did a nice job.
According to a recent study, nearly 50% of burglaries and unauthorized entries happen through propped or unlocked doors. We want to help our community improve this statistic.
At Loc-Doc Security, our customers want locked and latched doors and openings to prevent theft, property damage, or even physical attacks. We are urging everyone not to wait for something to happen. You can be proactive today.
Shifting the conversation maybe a little bit, because my mind is going like, this is tons of great information. There's really two factors that I want to kind of interject in here. But number one, if I'm a tenant, and we went through this process in our current facility, we moved in, like we were talking about earlier, back in 2009. Then we expanded, and then moved inside of the same business park. When we did our last expansion in 2019, we had a very in-depth conversation with the property owner at that time of what our plans were, what we were going to try to do. And it just clicked with me whenever we were talking just a few moments ago that they were inquiring, what is it that we were trying to accomplish? What was our space going to look like? What were we trying to do? And I didn't realize at the time how much that played into the conversation of expansion, because they didn't have to. Yeah, I think that there's maybe a misnomer based off, and I know we're talking office and flex space versus retail, but I think maybe you can tell me if I'm right or wrong on this, but I think that there's a lot of correlation there. When you're bringing in a tenant, there is as much risk on both sides, so you're wanting to make sure that you're bringing in the quality. We took a substantial amount of space here, so making sure that we were doing it in the right way and they weren't just taking that opportunity away from a different tenant, I'm guessing. So summing that up into a question is, if you're a tenant and you're trying to get into a space or into a property, or you're looking to acquire space, what are the things that you need to be prepared for to present yourself as a viable tenant versus just expecting, as long as I've got money, I'm going to get in here?
So, for anybody who's looking to lease space, that's the most important question, right? And having been working on the landlord side for, almost 20 years, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly from that. And presenting yourself in the best light, you made the comment, did you use the word risk? There's risk on both sides of the transaction. And understanding that's a key element, right? So putting in a tenant typically in a commercial setting isn't just here's the key, have fun. It usually requires time, maybe even some legal dollars for a lease, and then of course construction dollars, whether they're giving you an allowance or they're actually doing some renovations on your behalf, and that takes a long time. So removing the risk or reducing the risk for the landlord is one of the things that's going to help you get a better deal. Selling yourself to the landlord and helping the landlord understand that, hey, you want me. Hey, I'm a not only am I low risk, I'm actually good for you. I'm actually going to improve the tenant mix or your merchandising mix in your property. I'm going to attract more in presenting that in the best way. So what I suggest to, especially for small businesses or new businesses, have a business plan. If you don't have a traditional hard PDF business plan, you better have a good website that tells the story and tells it well, one or the other, or preferably both. Have your financials ready. Listen, I understand that you don't want to share financials, but here's the trick. And we talk about this all the time. I've been told more than enough times from small business owners, I don't want the landlord to know how much money I have and how much money I make, because then they're going to charge me more in rent. And I say, no, that's not how this works. That's not how this works at all.
Sure. Think
about it from the perspective of if you were to get a loan from a bank, you would want the bank to think that you're low risk, high credit, and you don't need the loan.
Sure.
Right? That's what you want the bank to think. A landlord's no different. Now, theoretically, they're not giving you a loan, but they are taking a risk, and a long-term risk. They're not selling you something. They're leasing something to you. So you need to show them very good credit, and you need to show them that you have a great business and you make lots and lots and lots of money, right? That will help you get a better deal.
Sure.
So again, it's business plan, if not business plan, website, show who you are, what you are, and why you're good for their property. And then be ready to submit your financials, and professionally, you'd be shocked at what we've seen over the years. It would be nice if an accountant actually did it, but if an accountant didn't do it, just download one off the internet, a personal balance sheet or a personal financial statement or a balance sheet and fill it out.
Yeah. I think that is something that when we started down the path of looking for space years ago, because, for a large portion of this business existence, it was just mobile only. We didn't have a physical location. So as we started down the process in 2009 to actually have office space, none of the things that we're just talking about were anywhere close to our mind. So I don't mean to draw a major conclusion, but I'm thinking that a lot of folks that are in the same process of looking for space or wanting to move into a place, unless they've had that experience before, don't know what they're supposed to be preparing themselves for.
No, you're absolutely right, and it's an unfortunate mistake that I think folks run into often. You're trying to cut to the chase. You're trying to discuss rent, and again, I would say that rent is it's a very important component, but it's not the most important component. You need to make sure that this is the right fit, the right marriage. We're committing to a 5-year lease, a 10-year lease, and we need to make sure that this is where you need. We need to make sure that we are both comfortable with one another. You're checking out my property. Do you want to commit to my property for 5 years? I'm checking you out. Do I want to commit to you for 5 years? And it's like any business transaction. Folks like to use the word partnership. Well, I'd like to review this as a partnership, not a landlord-tenant. Well, I mean, maybe, sure, fine. I don't know if it's a partnership. But it's certainly a long-term business relationship.
Oh, yeah.
And, just like your clients that you've been working with for years, you want to make sure that both of you are comfortable with one another.
So people are preparing themselves to look at space. They're going through that process, getting themselves prepared. Also, what are the questions that they should be asking? And I'm going to get a little maybe selfish on this, but when a tenant is coming in, how important is it to know that a property or property management has a good selection of service providers for that particular property, that it's well maintained? Like, what are the questions that they should be asking, or the things they should be looking for as well? So obviously they want to present themselves in the best light. Hey, here's our great business idea, or here's our great established business, and we want to bring value here. But also from my sake, hey, what are you doing to maintain this property? What's the long-term plan for this? How do you maintain it? What service providers do you work with, so that we know that this is something that we're going to be
It's a good question. It's a good question. Again, we're courting each other, right? We're making sure we want to have a 5 or 10-year business relationship. And I think one of the things I recommend, again, I'm always working for the landlord, but one of the things I recommend to tenants when I'm showing space to them and they start asking me a lot of the more subjective questions, right? tell me about your maintenance. Do you guys, sweep the floors, and do you have a,
Sure.
do you have a porter here? And you say, you know what? Why don't you go talk to the guy next door and ask him? And, obviously for me, I want to make sure that the guy next door is going to have something good to say. And if he doesn't have something good to say, then I'm going to have to talk to my property manager and say, hey, we got some problems.
Sure.
Fortunately for me, I've got a good portfolio and great property managers. But that's the number one thing. I mean, it just asks the other tenants. Now, listen, you're always going to find a tenant who's pissed off because his HVAC is broken.
Sure.
Well, if the HVAC is broken, but there's an HVAC truck out front, I mean, fair enough. I mean, that's reasonable.
Yeah.
I mean,
Things break, but how long has it been
Right.
broken and is it being repaired?
So listen, I think if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a small business owner, you're probably a pretty good judge of character. So when you're interviewing or having an off the cuff conversation with some of these other tenants, or maybe you don't want anybody to know you're looking at that space, fair enough. Find out who the management company is, and find out other properties that they manage. Find out who the owner is, and find out other properties that they own, and just go knock on their door. These are all businesses. It's not like you're knocking on somebody's house. People are willing to speak to you. I think that's the best thing. I
Yeah.
think it's the easiest thing.
I think it's a great advice. And again, thinking back years ago, I'm like, man, these are some things that we just didn't think about. I believe we've been very fortunate in our situation, so I don't have any complaints on it. But those are some major steps that we didn't even think about when we were looking for space, is talking to other tenants and
That's right.
understanding what that process looks like. Other question for you when it relates to either anchor tenants or bringing in kind of a new vibe. How do you manage, or is there a fear, and maybe that's just a leading question, of the fads? So you talked about multiple times, like the breweries; those are the hot things right now, and the axe throwing has been a big thing here recently. Things like that. How do you start to look at those things and say, well, this is actually going to be here for a while, or we're okay with taking this as a kind of a 2-3 year hope that it works type thing?
Sure. No, that's an important it's an important factor that we try to identify day one when we're talking to a client, whether it be a new client or a new property, or let's just call it a new project or a new assignment, is, hey, Mr. Landlord, what are your goals? What are you trying to do? And the answer ranges from, everything from, the property's been in my family for 150 years. I want it to be in the family for another 150 years. And I want to be proud every time I drive by it and say they're doing great things to my property. And that's a thing. That's a very real thing. And we do deal with that. It might be, hey man, I'm just a developer. I'm what we call a merchant developer. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to build a building, and I'm going to sell it for as much as I can. Take my cash off the table and go build another one. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, so this is not emotional. This is just numbers. Fair enough. Sure. I get you. And then what are you trying to reposition a property? And is it a little early? So we talked a little bit earlier about South End of Charlotte, which is that just a super hot, very dynamic submarket right outside of downtown. And you'll have owners that have owned these properties for a long time, and they think in a generation, or maybe they're in their 70s, so a generation is right around the corner, it will be something different. It'll be big. I've got this old warehouse building that my grandfather started his business in. I'm going to pass this on to my kids, or grandkids, but I don't want to commit too long term. What can we stick in that warehouse that's really cool for 5 years? But 5 years from now, we're going to sell it to some developer out of DC or New York, or maybe here in Charlotte, and they're going to pay us some obscene $25 million number, and they're going to tear it down and build something. For someone like me, whose job it is to fill the space right now or when you're ready, I need to know that up front. Because the first thing I'm going to do when I see your warehouse in South End is I'm going to say, hey, I've got this guy from New York who paid $25 million. Why don't you go buy an island somewhere?
Sure.
But if I'm speaking to an 80-year-old woman who's talking about her grandkids, she's not moving to an island anytime soon. She's cool.
Yeah.
So you need to understand, what are your goals?
Gotcha.
And that could be the tenancy, how much income. You hear, we call them unicorns, right? So you hear about so-and-so got such a great deal. And you're like, look, I get it. There are deals out there. No one's denying that somebody's paying some, single digit rent in South End today or even in South Park, let's use South End. I'm sure there's a deal. I'm sure somebody's got a great deal in South End. Why is, talk about Burger King at Fairview and Sharon Road, right? Why the hell is there Burger King there? Shouldn't there be a tower there by now? But in reality, that's not the market.
Yep.
There's the outsider that has a unique situation, like you just said.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, I'll give you a cheap rent, but you can only stay for a year. Okay, great. I'll do it. And understanding that from the get-go. And sometimes my clients don't know the answer.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I got to throw a few things at them. And I don't like that. Well, why don't you like that? I'm not really sure why I don't like that. Throw them the next one. I don't like that, but here's why I don't like that one. And so sometimes it's a little bit of we're trying to figure it out together. We just don't know.
Yeah. That is one of the big factors with using a broker or connecting up with a broker, because I think when you do it as an individual, you're trying to run a business and all this other stuff, and now you start looking around for leasing deals and leasing rates and all that stuff. And as you state, it's very subjective. It's what are you trying to accomplish? Where are you trying to go? What are you trying to do?
Right.
The rates are variable at that point. You're just trying to figure out what's going to work. So you've got to work with a broker because they understand. Okay, they're going to come in and do the same thing. So what are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? Where are you trying to go in the next couple of years? What do you need a lot for expansion? All of those things. Well, maybe we just need to get you in a place for the next 2.5 years.
Right.
So let's figure that out. So working with a broker on that side is a good practice as well. So the other component of all that is understanding, I guess, from a service provider standpoint, how is it best? Because where my mind is going in some of this, and maybe this, I don't know, maybe this is an off-the-wall question, but you're working with tenants, bringing tenants into a space. You're working with the landlord, connecting all those people together. As a service provider, how does a service provider make themselves I know that typically lands on the property management side, but how do they make themselves appealing to service those properties and those tenants?
And someday I'll figure that out. I look forward to learning the answer. I mean, hopefully I've learned one or two things because I've lasted like I said, almost 2 decades. So, listen, I think. Let me answer it from the other perspective. Let me tell you what we can't be. Okay. If you're trying to truly be a broker and be a service provider, and do right by your clients, you need to go in from a service mentality. My perspective, the portfolio that I work on with my partner Matt, we are an extension of our clients, right? And that's part of the conversation we have with them is, we're here for you, we're working for you, and we are subservient to you. We are serving you. Mm-hmm. Not all brokers, whether it be in our business or the Wolf of Wall Street, for crying out loud, not every broker out there in any specific brokerage industry considers themselves a service provider. Mm. Some people are just trying to squeeze out as many dollars out of every deal as humanly possible and make money. Mm-hmm. And there's room for that. So be it. I mean, I can think of plenty of folks that I've transacted with, and they just really don't care about their client. They're going to deal gets done. Everyone's happy. Fair enough. I don't care. Here's your check. All good. Yeah. But my goal is to have a long-term relationship with a few key clients, and continue to serve them and do whatever it is they need. So it's not about making the most of money on each individual deal. It's about stretching the relationship and growing the relationship as long as possible. And we could talk for hours and hours as to what that entails, but it's that mentality. Don't be what we like to call the cowboy broker, the guy who's just out there just, firing away and hoping to hit something. That's not the type of brokerage I'm doing. That's not, I would argue, necessarily a service-oriented brokerage. That's putting two people together, never talk to them again, take your check and run away to the next deal. Our structure is very different.
At Loc-Doc Security, we know that managing access to your facility can be challenging and time-consuming. From making sure new hires have access from day one to setting time restrictions for on-site vendors, Loc-Doc Security offers a wide range of solutions to help you manage any size facility. Take full control of your buildings, grant and revoke access quickly and easily, guaranteeing your facility's safety inside and out. Loc-Doc Security, your access management solution.
Kind of to wrap a bow on this, if somebody is in this spot where they're like, hey, I would like to, I've either got property that I'm trying to get out there, or I am looking for property, and they say, hey, this guy sounds like he knows what he's doing. I'd like to work with him. What is the typical introduction look like?
So are you asking what's that first conversation feel like, or how does the introduction take place, or
how would somebody come approach you and say I'm looking for property?
So well, first of all, let me take a small step back. If you're looking to lease or buy, just know, if you don't already know it, just like a residential realtor, you're not going to pay that broker's commission. So it's not going to cost you anything to hire this guy or gal. They will get paid by the landlord. So the first question I would you're asking around, you find out who's used brokers. You sit down with a broker. I think it's asking them how well they understand the market. Let them give you a little bit. Some of us specialize in product type. Mm-hmm. I specialize in retail, and I do North and South Carolina. I have a very big market, but I only do retail. And some people specialize in, one block in downtown Charlotte and do everything in that block. And you need to make that decision. You want somebody if you know exactly where you want to be, ask around, look at the signs, see who's doing brokerage in those markets. Sit down, talk to them, find out their knowledge of the market. References. Mm-hmm. Who have you placed recently? I think the third party, just like you asked, before you sign a lease in a property, how do you know that they're maintaining these properties? How do you know to ask the people that don't have any skin in the game? So I think references are key. And if you're new to it, this is going to be a gut check. But if you're new to it, first of all, admit once you've hired a broker that, hey, I'm new to this. I need the babysitting. Mm-hmm. And try to get that out of the person when you're interviewing before you hire them. Help me understand all the questions you asked me. What do I need to know before I embark on this process with you, Mr. Broker? And if all the broker wants to do, this is their first coffee meeting with them, is let's go see space. Let's go see space. You got to act on the space right now. You got to do this deal now. Oh, something just came up. Let's go. If you're new to it, you might want to say, well, let me take a step back. Mm-hmm. Is this person ready to put in the time to teach me the process and to hold my hand through the process, or are they just trying to get a good deal? Yeah,
it's funny. The reverse was the case with us, because I'm an impatient individual. So when we were ready to look at space, I wanted to go look at space today. Let's open the doors. Let's look at it. And the brokers that we worked with were like, hold on a second. Let's slow it down. Where are we wanting to go? What are the things that you're looking for? So I think it's great advice. The flip is the same. If the broker is just ready to open up doors and show you space, then you probably are getting off on the wrong foot.
And maybe that's what you want. But also, listen, having some self-awareness is also key, because if you're pushing a broker and a broker's slowing you down, it sounds like you figured it out. Well, maybe they're right. Maybe I should just sit back and listen. So a little self-awareness is a good thing.
Yeah. Darrell, thank you very much for your time and information today. I think it was well-rounded, lots of really good advice from all aspects and understanding where kind of the market is going. I guess if there was any type of a closing question, like what's the future of retail look like? I mean, things have gone so far online, everything can be delivered to my doorstep. Yeah. Will retail just go away at some point?
Well, we'll have to redo this in a couple of years. But I got to tell you, one of the things that we, for the past couple of decades, have been has really been bothering. I think us as a society in small towns is, the big box retailers wiped out downtown or wiped out the small little, neighborhood businesses. I would argue, I've heard this argued, and I kind of am jumping on the bandwagon. I would argue that the Amazon effect, the online effect, is probably one of the best things that could have happened to small business owners that just want to open 1,000 square feet and specialize in I'm a runner in running shoes. The best thing that could happen to them is the internet, because the internet doesn't provide the experience and the service that those small stores can provide. And what we used to call the category killers, like the Bed Bath & Beyonds of the world, the Dick's Sporting Goods of the world, they're the ones that are much more susceptible to the internet than the person who wants to open a small shop in small town America and just specialize in one or two things. So I think the bright side is we're going to continue to see more entrepreneurial businesses that can marry a little bit of an online presence with a cool little store downtown or a cool little store in whatever first floor of your apartment building.
So the experience probably is more so a big factor, especially when you get into that niche environment, because it's all about the experience at that point. When the customer comes in to buy something, it's not just a transaction, it's the experience. Because if it's just a transaction, I can go online.
Listen, and I know we're wrapping this up, so it's a little weedsy, but let me take that one step further. It's about the experience, and if you could have, make it up. Again, we're running shoes, right? Hey, I've got all these running shoes. Let's try out. Let's figure it out. Oh, wait, I don't have your color. Well, of course I can have your color. I'm not Dick's Sporting Goods. I don't have every color, but I'll have you the color in 24, 48, 36 hours, whatever it may be. We are now inclined to we've been trained through the internet that, oh, cool, I'll come in here, we'll make some decisions, and then in a day or two, it'll show up at my house. We're used to that, and that's the best thing that could happen to that service provider who's more than just a merchant trying to make money in the margins. Like Walmart's making their money in the margins, stack them deep, sell them cheap. You're not that. You're a service provider that's teaching somebody about the product, getting them to make the right purchase, and you can do that with a small store because of the internet. You couldn't do that 15, 20 years ago because the category killers out in the suburbs would have killed you.
That's a great way to wrap this up.
Yep.
Thank you very much for your time. It's been a blast. Darrell, thanks again for joining us today. Man, it was a blast to chat with you and learn a little bit more about retail. It's always been an interesting conversation, an interesting topic to me, and I got a lot of interesting takeaways today. Again, if you want to get in contact with Darrell, you can find out more on the links listed below, and you'll be able to find his contact information. If this is your first time listening or watching, make sure you subscribe, because we have a brand new episode out every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., and we don't want you to miss it. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time right here on the Coffee Break Podcast.